Good morning, everyone. The sun is shining, the birds are chirping. Where am I? In Luxor, on the West Bank.
Today I'm going to take you to the least visited tombs in ancient Thebes. Have you ever heard about the Necropolis of El-Asasif? We can find there tombs of the most influential and powerful men of their time. Thousands of tourists pass them every day on their way to the Hatshepsut temple, often not realizing that there's such a unique place right next to them. The necropolis of Asasif is located near some of the most iconic sites in western Thebes. It's just right in front of the famous temple of Hatshepsut in Deir el-Bahari, a few hundred meters from Sheikh Abd el-Qurna necropolis, and less than a kilometer in a straight line from the Valley of the Kings. Almost never visited and never filmed tombs. I'll show you them today, so stay with me and let's go! Great pylons and arches dominate the desert landscape. These are the remains of the huge temple-like mud brick structures, still visible and quite well preserved. This is how the highest officials of the late period built their tombs. We'll get inside them too, but first I'm taking you to a much older tomb from the Golden Age of Egypt, the time of the great Amenhotep III of the 18th dynasty. The tomb belongs to Kheruef, steward of the Queen Tiye, the great royal wife of Amenhotep III, mother of the famous Akhenaten. Kheruef was a very influential official, the right-hand man of probably the most powerful woman of the time. His rank and wealth are evidenced by his tomb, or rather a huge funerary complex of almost 6,000 cubic meters, which he never finished. Kheruef served during the reigns of Amenhotep III and his son Amenhotep IV, perhaps the co-regent before he became Akhenaten. When the old pharaoh Amenhotep III was getting weak, his wife was strengthening her influence, thus Kheruef's position must have been very strong at that time. The son of a military scribe and priestess made an amazing career and was known as governor of the palace, servant of the king at the time of the Jubilee, the royal scribe, and, most importantly, steward of the great royal wife Tiye. Amenhotep III on the throne. Interestingly, it was at the end of his life that he began to portray himself rejuvenated, with kind of caricatured facial features. At that time, he also declared himself a living god. His images here outshine even those depicting the owner of the tomb. Ramesses III would return to this tradition and deify himself during his lifetime. I showed you the tombs of his sons, link in the description. Amenhotep dies in 1353 and his son will soon use his father's methods to replace the old religion with the worship of himself as the beloved of Aten, the only god. One of the reliefs that have been painted shows Egypt's enemies. Each figure was displayed with the tribe name on their body. The external enemies, like the Minoans, Asiatics and Libyans with their distinctive hairstyle, as well as rebels from inside the empire, the Nubians and Bedouins from the north and from the western desert. Although only a small part of the former funerary complex can be visited today, entrance and portico at the end of the open courtyard, the reliefs have been preserved in a good condition and are truly beautiful. These are the times of the golden age of Egypt. Art is characterized by harmony, perfect proportions, and attention to detail. This is the last stage of classical Egyptian pre-Amarna art, just before Akhenaten's revolution. Beautiful reliefs showing 8 princesses from the pharaoh's court. The attention to detail is amazing, especially the exceptional wigs, certainly all the rage of the 1350s BC. The reliefs are very similar to the ones I showed you in the tomb of the vizier of Amenhotep III, Ramose, link in the description. I feel like they could have been made by the same artist. Dancers in strange poses, dancing in front of the royal couple, in a scene depicting the first Jubilee festival of Amenhotep III, in the 30th year of his reign. Among the dancers, graffiti from Ramessid times. Not only did someone sketch this figure, but also started carving it out. I don't think I've ever seen such beautifully crafted hieroglyphs in any of the tombs. There are both convex and concave ones here. Why was Kheruef never buried here? Did he abandon his tomb to, like the vizier Ramose, move with the court to Amarna where the officials had to rebuild their tombs? Or did he oppose Akhenaten's policy, becoming a victim of his religious persecution? I guess we'll never know. Kheruef's huge tomb was obviously reused by later Ramessidic officials. From the inner open courtyard we can get to as many as 6 Ramessidic tombs built more than 100 years later. They are close to the public, but I managed to film 2 of them. Half-finished niches hidden in darkness, deep shafts partly buried in rubble. This is definitely not a safe place. And of course, as usual, I forgot to bring my rope. These narrow corridors and chambers are terribly hot and stuffy. My camera often turns off from overheating. The flashlight also doesn't work properly. we come across the remains of archaeologists' work, bones and mummified limbs in baskets. But guano is everywhere. Luckily, we didn't encounter any of them. Yuck. Over a dozen such tombs have been found in the Kheruef funerary complex. I wonder how many more are yet to be discovered. The next tomb, TT279, was built almost 800 years later. It belongs to Pabasa, also known as Pabas, who served as the chief steward of the god's wife of Amun. The tomb lies in the northern part of the El-Assasif necropolis. Its mud brick superstructure has been well preserved. Walls and mud brick pylons visible above the ground defined the boundaries of the tomb and gave it a monumental character. The location of the tomb couldn't be better. The processional road from Karnak to Deir el-Bahari led through Asasif. Every year, carried in a sacred bark, Amun passed his tomb during the beautiful Feast of the Valley, blessing the deceased. Above the entrance we can see a beautiful relief showing a sacred bark with a moon in the form of the sun, supported by the primordial god of wind, Shu. It depicts Pabasa's wish for rebirth. The underground part of the tomb, built into the limestone floor, is divided into 3 parts: a small vestibule, a sun court, and a hall with niches containing burial shafts. The walls are beautifully decorated. Here's a quite iconic relief depicting Pabasa with his favorite dog, Hakkanu. Although in Egyptian tombs the dead were usually portrayed with cats, Pabasa must have been a dog person. The tomb was built in the 7th century BC during the reign of the Said pharaoh Psamtik I. Psamtik was the first ruler of the 26th dynasty and also the first pharaoh of the late period of Egypt. He was the son of Necho, the ruler of Sais, the most important of the 12 kings of the Nile Delta, established by the Assyrian occupiers. The Assyrians ruled northern Egypt from 671 BC. After taking Memphis, the Kushite pharaoh Taharka of the 25th dynasty fled south to Thebes. Necho died during Tentamani's invasion of Memphis, the successor of Taharka. Psamtik managed to escape to Nineveh, only to return to Egypt in 664 BC with the Assyrian army, which eventually drove the Kushites back to Nubia, restoring Assyrian control over all of Egypt. Psamtik was given the throne of Memphis and Sais in the north, but was soon exiled by other vassal lords of the Delta. With the help of Greek and Arab mercenaries, Psamtik regained power and became the sole ruler of northern Egypt. In 663, the Assyrians plundered and devastated the holy city of Thebes, and its inhabitants were deported to Assyria in great numbers. The Assyrian king Ashurbanipal described the sack of Thebes as follows. "This city, the whole of it, I conquered with the help of Ashur and Ishtar. Silver, gold, precious stones, all the wealth of the palace, rich cloth, precious linen, great horses, supervising men and women, 2 obelisks of splendid electrum weighing 2,500 talents. The doors of temples I tore from their bases and carried them off to Assyria. With this weighty booty I left Thebes. Against Egypt and Kush I have lifted my spear and shown my power. With full hands I have returned to Nineveh in good health." Interestingly, even in the Bible, in the book of Isaiah, we find a prophecy describing the sack of Thebes. "Just as my servant Isaiah has gone stripped and barefoot for 3 years, as a sign and portent against Egypt and Kush, so the king of Assyria will lead away stripped and barefoot the Egyptian captives and Kushite exiles, young and old, with buttocks bared, to Egypt's shame. Those who trusted in Kush and boasted in Egypt will be dismayed and put to shame." According to Herodotus, 240,000 Egyptian soldiers fled with the Kushites to Nubia to settle there. Tantamani returned to his hometown of Napata, and his successors ruled only Nubia, but still considered themselves pharaohs. Of course, my big dream is to visit and film their famous Nubian pyramids in northern Sudan, which, although much larger, resemble the ones we've already seen in Deir el-Medina. In 656, Psamtik marched again on Thebes, where the power was still held by the mighty priestess, the god's wife of Amun, Shepenupet II, daughter and sister of the former Kushite rulers. She was forced to adopt Psamtik's daughter, Nitocris I. Psamtik soon completed the unification of Egypt. The office of God's wife of Amun is the traditional representation of the ruling family among the influential caste of Theban priests and nobles. Hence, this title of the highest priestess was given to the pharaoh's wife or daughter. They held power for life, so Nitocris had to wait until Shepenupet II, who ruled for 50 years despite the capture of Thebes by the Assyrians, would die. The highest priestess was surrounded by retinues of priests and officials. Among them, the most important was Pabasa, who as her representative gained access to the royal palace, which made him rich and very influential. Unfortunately, we know very little about Pabasa. There wasn't much found during the excavations in the beginning of the 20th century. But still we can admire his huge anthropomorphic granite sarcophagus in the Kelvin Grove Art Gallery in Glasgow, Scotland. Quite unexpectedly, the Neo-Assyrian Empire began to disintegrate in the 20s of the 7th century BC. Egypt regained its independence and even partially restored its territories in Syro-Palestine. Psamtik also initiated the construction of the famous canal connecting the Nile with the Red Sea. The 54 years of his reign from the capital in Sais marked the entry of Egypt into its late period and meant the end of the Third Intermediate Period, the time of disintegration of the state and the reign of foreign rulers. The late period is 300 years of rule by the last native pharaohs, who finally succumbed to a powerful new enemy from the east, the Persians. Nitocris held the office of God's wife of Amun for 30 years. Her next chief steward after the death of Pabasa was Ankhhor during the brief reign of Psamtik II in the late 6th century BC. Let's take a look at his tomb. The tomb was erected in the time of Psamtik II, grandson of Psamtik I and son of Necho II. Psamtik led his army into the kingdom of Kush, conquered Napata, plundered and ruined Upper Nubia so that it would never threaten Egypt ever again. However, he didn't annex it to the empire. He also destroyed Egyptian monuments erected during the hated 25th Nubian dynasty. Ankhhor's tomb, TT416, was discovered only in 1971. Although it's open to the public, almost no one comes here. As is the case with private ancient Egyptian tombs, it was never completed. Ankhhor died in 585 BC. Many of his relatives are also buried here. Later it was usurped by the large family of the priests of Amun of the 30th dynasty. It was actually reused until late Roman times. So many chambers, corridors and shafts were added here. Watch your step! The necropolis of El-Assasif features a lot of burials from the late period. Their construction was possible due to the pharaoh of the 20th dynasty, Ramesses IV, who decided to build his mortuary temple at the eastern part of the El-Assasif, blocking the causeways to the mortuary temples of Mentuhotep and Thutmose III. As a result, the causeways were no longer used, creating the space for the new burials. Crowds of tourists going to the temple of Hatshepsut pass these tombs without even realizing its existence. There are no tourists here at all. These are the little-known places I would like to show you on this channel. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, please subscribe to my channel, like and comment. It means a lot to me, as it's hard for small channels like mine to break through on YouTube. Thanks to all my patrons, you're the best. And if you'd like to become one, I link my Patreon account below. See you on another ancient site.